UK bans ransom payments to Russian hackers, what you need to know. In a significant move, British institutions will no longer be allowed to pay ransoms to Russian hackers. This decision was announced by the Cabinet Office on Tuesday, which revealed that it is implementing modifications to the National Security and Investment Act. This legislation is designed to protect vital sectors of the economy from harmful foreign influences and threats. Among the changes, the government will eliminate the obligation for major businesses to inform authorities about internal restructuring or to notify officials when they appoint a liquidator. Pat McFadden, the lead minister for the department, explained to members of Parliament that these adjustments aim to reduce business burdens without exposing the country to greater risk. Additionally, ministers are set to engage in consultations regarding a redefinition of what constitutes key sectors under this legislation. This update will emphasize the growing significance of industries such as semiconductors and artificial intelligence. Furthermore, there are plans to include the water sector under the umbrella of national security legislation. This inclusion means that the water industry in Britain, which is currently facing intense scrutiny due to its heavily indebted ownership structures, will have any potential acquisitions, especially those involving foreign entities, escalated to national security experts for review. In the annual review of the legislation, also released on Tuesday, it was disclosed that the government had only blocked a single deal from all those that were subjected to further examination. Moreover, 16 other cases received a final order notice aimed at mitigating risks to national security, which may involve imposing strict conditions on investment agreements. But here's where it gets controversial: are these measures enough to truly safeguard the nation, or do they merely scratch the surface of a much deeper issue? What do you think? Should the government take even more drastic steps to protect our critical infrastructure? Share your thoughts in the comments. UK's new ransomware crackdown, mandatory reporting and payment bans explained. Ransomware attacks are escalating rapidly, and the UK government is finally taking a stand, but the question remains, will their new approach actually make a difference? On Tuesday, the Home Office published its formal response to a public consultation focused on changing laws around ransomware, marking a small but significant step forward in the nation's fight against these cyber threats. Yet, despite the progress, skepticism about the effectiveness of these measures still lingers. Public consultations are a standard part of the UK's legislative process, allowing government bodies to gather input before enacting new laws. In this case, the Home Office outlined 3 major policy proposals designed to confront the ransomware crisis gripping the country. They then invited feedback from the public to help shape the final legal framework. The core proposals include a ban on ransom payments by organizations operating within the public sector or involved in critical national infrastructure, a mandatory requirement for ransomware victims to notify government authorities before making any extortion payments, and an obligation for every victim to report attacks to law enforcement agencies. This official response document, which you can find here, https://asset.publishing.service.gov.uk/media/687f4877c649/140d1f63267c6496government_response_in_template_final_response, compiles opinions both supporting and opposing the proposed actions. It comes in the wake of several high-profile ransomware incidents in the UK, such as cyber attacks that disrupted supply chains leading to empty shelves in multiple grocery stores. https://therecord.media/co-op-cybertech-uk-company-fears-hackers-still-in-system, and, tragically, a ransomware event linked to the death of a patient in a London hospital. https://therecord.media/ransomware-attack-contributed-patient-death-uk-NHS. Interestingly, despite the new government's claims about a fresh plan for change, these 3 proposals mirror policies developed when the Conservative Party last held power. Recorded Future News first revealed these plans prior to Rishi Sunak's snap election, which then delayed the official consultation launch. https://therecord.media/uk-proposal-mandatory-reporting-ransomware-attacks This delay highlights how slow the UK has been to address ransomware strategically. In fact, even back in 2022, ransomware was dominating British government crisis meetings known as COBR, the same period when key officials seemed more focused on the politically charged issue of migrants crossing the English Channel in small boats. https://therecord.media/ransomware-incidents-now-make-up-british-management-cobra- Over the past 5 years, ransomware attacks on UK organizations have steadily increased year after year. https://therecord.media/uk-ico-ransomware-investigations-data. Jamie McColl, a senior research fellow at the respected think tank RUSI, welcomes the government's heightened attention to ransomware, especially after such a long period of ruthless attacks targeting vital UK businesses and critical infrastructure. However, he also cautions that serious doubts remain about the potential success of these measures. For example, McColl questions whether the targeted ban on ransom payments by public sector and critical infrastructure entities will have any meaningful impact on cybercriminal behavior. He points out that most ransomware attacks are opportunistic rather than carefully planned with legal knowledge. Ransomware, as noted by the National Crime Agency, NCA, and National Cyber Security Center, NCSC, in their own white paper, https://www.ncsc.gov.uk/whitepaper/ransomware-extortion-and-the-cyber-crime-ecosystem, is mostly an opportunistic crime, McColl explains. Most cybercriminals aren't likely to study the complexities of UK legislation or the exact definitions of what constitutes critical national infrastructure. Consequently, he doubts that cybercriminals will change their targeting strategies based on these payment bans. Instead, such a ban might make recovery from ransomware far more difficult for critical infrastructure operators without actually decreasing their chances of being hit. Another aspect of the government's approach involves mandatory notifications to build what's called a payment prevention regime. This system is designed to give the government a chance to step in if a ransom payment could potentially funnel money to sanctioned or hostile actors. While mandatory reporting will certainly help improve the government's understanding of ransomware's true scale, McColl raises concerns about whether law enforcement agencies will have the capacity to effectively utilize this influx of data. Currently, the NCA and other law enforcement bodies have limited resources, even though they have pulled off some impressive operations. For instance, last year, the NCA led an international crackdown against the Lockbit ransomware-as-a-service gang. This group was responsible for roughly a quarter of all ransomware attacks worldwide before their core infrastructure was taken down. https://therecord.media/lockbit-ransom-gang-shutdown-cybercrime-intelligence-captured. During a press conference in London, NCA Director General Graham Bigger openly admitted, "If we had more resources, we'd be able to do more." Despite such admissions and growing calls from officials to proactively combat ransomware instead of merely reacting, there is no sign yet of increased government funding for these critical disruption efforts. https://therecord.media/uk-urge-to-get-on-forward-foot-with-ransomware. McColl underscores this funding dilemma. Requiring mandatory reporting of ransomware incidents is a step in the right direction, but questions remain about how this process will function in practice. If the NCA is inundated with more intelligence reports, it will need significant increases in budget and personnel to analyze and act upon this information. Without such investment, the extra data could end up overwhelming law enforcement resources rather than empowering them. So far, there is no indication that the National Cyber Crime Unit within the NCA will receive such additional resources. Looking ahead, any new legislation from the Home Office aimed at combating the ransomware wave affecting UK society is unlikely to appear within the current parliamentary session. Instead, the government plans to introduce a more comprehensive overhaul of the country's cybersecurity regulations, 3 years after the previous administration prematurely claimed to have updated the laws without actually implementing concrete changes. https://therecord.media/cyber-laws-uk-kings-speech-2023. Earlier this year, the government previewed what will be included in the upcoming Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, CSRB, which will primarily affect regulated critical infrastructure organizations. This bill is expected to reinforce cyber incident reporting, but details about how it will intersect with forthcoming ransomware rules remain unclear. https://therecord.media/uk-set-out-cyber-reporting-requirements-critical-infrastructure. McColl highlights a concerning disconnect between the CSRB and the ransomware proposals. Right now, the definition of critical national infrastructure in the CSRB is much narrower than in the ransomware consultation. That means the government might improve cyber resilience requirements for only a small subset of critical infrastructure while simultaneously banning a much wider range of organizations from making ransom payments. That UK leads crackdown on ransomware, protecting hospitals, businesses and critical services. The UK is taking a bold stand against cybercriminals with a new set of measures aimed at tackling the growing threat of ransomware. This initiative is a direct response to the public's concerns and the increasing impact of ransomware attacks on our critical services and economy. Ransomware, a malicious software tool, has become a serious issue, costing the UK millions and putting lives at risk. It allows cybercriminals to encrypt or steal data, holding it hostage until a ransom is paid. Recent high-profile attacks have highlighted the urgent need for action. The proposed measures are designed to disrupt the business model of these criminals. Public sector bodies and critical national infrastructure operators, like the NHS, local councils, and schools, will be prohibited from paying ransom demands. This move is supported by a majority of the public, with nearly three-quarters backing the proposal. But here's where it gets controversial. The ban doesn't apply to all businesses. Those not covered will be required to notify the government of any intention to pay a ransom. The government will then provide guidance, including alerting businesses to the potential legal risks of sending money to sanctioned cybercriminal groups, many of which operate from Russia. Additionally, a new mandatory reporting system is being developed to provide law enforcement with the intelligence needed to track down perpetrators and disrupt their activities. This system has strong public support, as shown by the consultation responses. The UK is leading the way in tackling ransomware with this comprehensive package of measures. It aims to strike at the heart of cybercriminals' operations, strengthen national security, and protect key services and businesses from disruption. Security Minister Dan Jarvis emphasizes the predatory nature of ransomware, which threatens public safety and vital services. He believes that by working together with industry, the UK can send a strong message in the fight against ransomware. In addition to these measures, the government is urging organizations to improve their resilience against ransomware attacks. This includes having offline backups, plans to operate without IT for extended periods, and well-rehearsed strategies for system restoration. The impact of cybercriminals goes beyond financial loss. In some cases, essential services have been brought to a halt, and lives have been put in danger. A recent example involves an NHS organization identifying a ransomware attack as a contributing factor in a patient's death, highlighting the urgent need for better protection. These attacks have exposed the vulnerabilities within our public and private institutions, from major retailers and supermarkets to NHS hospitals. The British Library, a custodian of significant human knowledge, fell victim to a devastating ransomware attack in October 2023. Rebecca Lawrence, the chief executive, emphasizes the library's commitment to sharing its experiences to help build collective resilience against cybercrime. Jonathan Ellison, Director of National Resilience at the NCSC, highlights how these new measures aim to undermine the criminal ecosystem causing harm to our economy. He urges organizations to strengthen their defenses using proven frameworks and be prepared to respond to and recover from incidents. Shireen Curry-Hack, CEO of the Co-op, echoes the importance of learning from these attacks, building resilience, and supporting each other to prevent future harm. She welcomes the government's focus on cyber crime and sees these measures as a step towards a safer digital future. These robust proposals are part of the government's plan for change, a comprehensive strategy to defend businesses, services, and infrastructure against cyber threats and better protect the public. For more information, you can read the government's response to the ransomware consultation on gov.uk.